Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Tracks as we cover our second part of the Paul Dini, Don Kramer Detective Comics run. That is roughly issues 827 to 834. Most of these issues were collected in a collection called Death in the City way back in the day, which is a cool name. It's better than the name of the prior trade, which was Detective, which, when you're dealing with Batman, a little generic. But I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland. Matt, how you doing this evening?
Doing all right. See, Bobby, the naming techniques for these trades is very annoying because calling it detective, being in Detective Comics,
You wouldn't need to read Detective to understand Death in the City. But on the other hand, why not give them Volume 1, Volume 2?
I wouldn't skip over it. I would read both.
Issue number 827 is Double Talk. What goes down in issue 827 Double Talk?
Well, Bob, Scarface returns from the dead because didn't he die a long time ago?
Maybe it was War Game?
We do find out now there's a new ventriloquist, and that ventriloquist is now a woman.
Least
Peyton-
surprising Paul Dini move ever.
Yeah, very least surprising.
To start off with that, on page 118, we have Scarface in a Robin outfit, which is actually a pretty cool idea. I dig that idea. I was a little annoyed that the way Don Kramer blocks the page, though you don't actually see Scarface full on in the Robin outfit. If I recall correctly, you're behind Scarface and he's in the shadow. But I just the idea of Scarface in a Robin outfit.
I wonder if there's a reason for that. It just looked really way too goofy for the comic itself to have him in that full outfit ensemble all the way. I do appreciate that he's on the Batmobile. So once again, we have another villain, Bob, that we, in early aughts, we love to put the villains in the Batmobile. Maybe that was a way to sell toys.
Matt, is your theory of the case here going to be that Broken City was such a bad ventriloquist story that they had to kill the ventriloquist?
They had no other option. He was like the new Hush. They had no other good ventriloquist stories could ever be told.
I strongly disagree with that. Broken City was a good ventriloquist story. This is a good ventriloquist story. Was ventriloquist maybe actually killed in War Games? Because they were talking about some ventriloquist versus Great White Shark mob war. I assume that was a part of War Games. And also, did ventriloquist kill Matches Malone in War Games? Because isn't that referenced in this issue?
The thing is, ventriloquist just died every single big Batman crossover. Remember, he got shot in like Night Quest.
I don't remember that. Was that Night Quest the Crusade?
Ventriloquist apparently died shortly after the War Games run.
Another casualty of war was Matches Malone. Do you think it's funny that Batman has to go as this blonde guy instead of Matches Malone?
He has a different disguise, although we've seen several different ones before, but the go-to is Matches Malone.
We've definitely seen him do other disguises.
Batman apparently has a time machine because he's got all the time in the world to do all this.
As the last issue of Devin Grayson's Gotham Knights taught us, he only has to sleep, 4 hours a night?
Oh, yeah, that's right. 24/7.
32 of Gotham Knights. One shot, that was the end of Grayson's run. I did want to ask a question. So, we've already acknowledged that Lady Ventriloquist being a leggy blonde is the most Dini thing he could have done. But was the original ventriloquist ever on Batman the Animated Series?
It was on 4 episodes of the animated series. Yeah, and he was on 2 episodes of the new Batman.
I don't remember that at all. I was going to make a point about how ventriloquist was maybe a little too weird for the 90s show, but I guess that's totally wrong because it does seem to be an interesting shift. In the late 80s and the early 90s, they were pushing ventriloquist as the big new Batman villain, almost as big as the Joker, and that just tapered off.
Bob forgets the power of Goosebumps.
The children's books or the phenomenon on your skin?
The children's books, Bob. Don't you remember the dummy from He opened up new doors for children's entertainment, allowing dummies to be all over the place.
I feel like you're really doing a lot of Chucky erasure here, man. I'm not here for it. Chucky walked so Scarface could run. One new angle for Scarface I liked is on page 127, and this is going to be my favorite panel. We see Scarface speaking Italian to some of his mafiosos. I love that. I don't think we've ever seen that before from Scarface. Maybe I'm wrong, but if we haven't, that's genius on Dini's part.
It is genius, Bob. Scarface, no matter who the ventriloquist is, Scarface is always Scarface, and that's what's awesome about it. He doesn't change. However, I will say this, Bob. Should there be multiple dolls?
I would tend to say no. I tend to think it makes the concept less special because you want there to be the possibility that there's something supernatural about Scarface the doll. You see that earlier with Batman making fun of Bullock and calling him a scared kid for being a little skeeved out by Scarface. So I would say no on the multiple dolls, but what do you think?
All right, I agree with you. There should be fear that the doll's going to get blown up, and that's the end of Scarface. Lady Scarface just has a closet full of them. She just goes and takes it out of the closet, and no big
Yeah,
deal.
I like ventriloquist in Scarface, but I can't say that I have read everything, nor that I carefully memorized everything they did. Like Query and Echo, we talked about last week. I like the idea of ventriloquist in Scarface, maybe more than I know every iteration of the character. But that said, it's entirely possible that the multiple dolls thing pre-existed this issue. I could see Alan Grant and Norm Brayfogle doing that too. I still don't love it, but that might not be a new idea with Dini and the lady ventriloquist.
I could see them doing that too, but I've seen ventriloquist stories where he has to piece the doll back together, glue it back together from and he makes it out of like crap, legit, the original Scarface stuff.
Wasn't there a time where he just had like a Mr. Sacco when
Yeah, that was
Scarface
that was yeah.
You have one other very important ventriloquist question.
At the end of the issue, Bob, is it implied that Lady Scarface fucks the doll?
What's the word that's stronger than implied but less than outright depicted? Because yes, she certainly gets down with that ventriloquist dummy, Matt. It turns out Scarface is also a sex doll.
There's a little heart and it says click. I'm just going to assume that was insertion.
The question, is she fully fulfilling the role of the ventriloquist? Did Arnold Wesker also have to get down and dirty with Scarface?
And which does Scarface prefer?
We all know he prefers his original dummy.
We got an Alfred appearance in this issue, so far Alfred won here.
It's the hot new podcast segment that's sweeping the nation.
Alfred count, folks. All right, issue 828, Bob, Shark Bite.
Did the title and the copious great white shark references in last week's comics, did that really swerve you? Did that make you think that this issue's Shark Bite was going to be about the great white shark?
You read these issues and you would think great white shark Bob is going to be the next hot thing. He was the next Hush. He didn't take off, unfortunately, but...
Hey, man, let me just say that unlike Hush, Great White Shark was in a really good Batman comic, Arkham Asylum, Living Hell. Hush can't say that. Hush was never in a good Batman comic.
Hush wasn't in War Games, though.
But he was in Hush Returns, which is worth... I don't know. I haven't read War Games. I suspect Hush Returns is worse, but I don't know. Hush Returns didn't kill Steffi Brown, so I don't know.
In this particular story, Batman and Riddler solve the murder of an art patron who suspiciously falls from the deck of a Wayne Company yacht.
Another great Batman competing with P.I. Riddler comic. I do love the idea that reformed P.I. Riddler is just showing up at Bruce Wayne's parties, having a great time, annoying Bruce Wayne to no end. And in the costume party, Matt, did you catch a sight of what I'm going to say is King Tut at the costume party?
King Tut was there, along with the pirate and Dracula.
Who was your favorite appearance at the costume party, Matt?
Well, Bob, my favorite appearance was this dude who shows up towards the end. And he's in the beginning too, but I don't know if he just stole it from the museum itself, but it's the Karabati warrior armor dude. He puts pine needles on his head. That's how the mystery is solved. It's ridiculous, this dude in his armor. Absolutely ridiculous. When I saw this guy, I thought he was going to be the new gimmick villain. Hedgehog, it's a strange costume, but he had it on at the party earlier. And then it evolves into this scary outfit with the weapon and everything. It was a cool look.
This was the best one-off mystery so far of the run. Dini did a really good job building up the mystery of this. And also it was just a good action issue because you were dealing with this plot about museum theft, right? And so you got to use a lot of the gimmick stuff and a lot of the exhibits and storage stuff from the museum, like this Cure Body armor. My favorite panel was Riddler is bleeding from his forehead because he got a hit, and then he's lighting an arrow from the museum's collection on fire to shoot at the guy you dubbed the Hedgehog a minute ago. That was a really cool moment.
This issue reminds me of episodes of Scooby-Doo.
Oh, it very much is a Scooby-Doo episode.
Alfred does make an appearance. Just want to throw that out there. So we're at Alfred 2. I just want to point out that Alfred's in the majority of the Batman stories. Perhaps the better stories have Alfred in them, and the ones that don't have Alfred are not as good.
It would just be total coincidence because you would acknowledge that nothing in these episodes is a very great use of Alfred. Nothing about Alfred's presence, unless it's just some sort of magical coincidence, makes the issues good Batman issues.
Well, that's what we're going to find out, Bob. That is why we're doing this hard hitting research for our Uncanny Treks listeners.
Science, ladies and gentlemen, science. Well, speaking of being unscientific, the next two issues, 829 to 830, is a two-part fill-in by Stuart Moore and Andy Clark called Siege. It's not bad. Weirdly, I believe it actually is collected in the Death in the City collection, but I just didn't think there was much to say about it. It's Tim Drake doing Die Hard and Wayne Tower. To say a little bit about the creators, Moore is an editor, but he did co-write a couple of issues of Mark Waid's Supergirl and the Legion. And then Clark is mostly a Batman fill-in artist in this era, but he drew a Legion spinoff called The Rebels in 2009. So I'm a little fond of both of them for having small connections to the Legion. And it's fine. You don't have to skip it. Listeners, I just didn't think we had anything to say about it.
We're in 1 year later territory, so they were trying so hard to reignite that spark that Robin had in the early 90s. I brought this up the last episode, but I just don't think it was ever going to happen again. I don't think Robin is going
I
to.
disagree. I strongly disagree. At this point, nobody was writing Damian besides Grant Morrison at this point. And so Tim Drake was still the default Robin you used, and he still had his own series and would keep having his own series for quite a few years to come. Even though I really like Damian and you really like Damian, I don't think it was so clear that Damian was going to stick as the new default Robin after Morrison. It could have easily gone in a different direction. If anything, I would maybe more credit, and I don't like this run, I don't think it's a good run, but I would maybe more credit like Pete Tomasi and Patrick Gleason's Batman and Robin for really cementing that, no, Damian is the primary Robin.
That does make sense. I guess it took longer than I thought for Damian to seal the fate of Tim Drake. Which, how many years off was that?
He's read Robin in a year or two after this, because there's a Red Robin series before New 52. In the New 52 that really does maybe cement. If I'm remembering right, the Tomasi Gleason run does start a little bit before New 52, but then gets relaunched with New 52. And the New 52 relaunch that cements the divide, because you have Damian primarily starring in the Batman and Robin book with Batman, and then in New 52 you have, I think they call it Titans, but it's basically Young Justice with Robin in a very Red Robin costume, but I think still just called Robin, leading like Wonder Girl and a very Young Justice Teen Titans team. That's maybe in 2011 with the New 52 relaunch. It was already in motion, but that cements the divide where Damian is the primary Robin and Tim now mostly exists for Titans and Young Justice comics.
About 5 years off from this.
It just is interesting to imagine what had happened if people hadn't cottoned to Damian and he'd become maybe not like Harold and Hush, but something where writers felt occasionally compelled to bring him up to deal with him, but it just went back to Tim being the main Robin.
If he became the Alexander, Alexander.
That's a great comparison. Yeah. But you're right now that unfortunately I liked him, but yeah, Tim's pretty low in the power rankings of the Batman family. Even though you do have stuff like James Tynion's now nearly 10 years old run, but it still feels recent to me, his run on Detective Comics where Tim is basically the leader of the Bat family.
These issues, Bob, do they give you like Gotham Knights vibes from that issue where like Nightwing and Robin were playing a tag in Wayne Tower?
Now that you said that, yeah, it does have that feel. Issue number 831, kind of like family. What goes down in that issue, Matt?
So, Bob, Lady Ventriloquist kidnaps Harley Quinn, who is trying really hard to make
payroll. In this issue, Matt, we're really seeing Batman nag his foes. He calls the old ventriloquist a bad ventriloquist. He says Harley's not a good actress. Very critical remarks from old Batman.
Just trying to get to the heart of those murderers, let them beat up their comp.
Were you surprised that we had a Falcone reference in this issue?
They just slipped that in there to be cool, Bob. But my question really, though, here was, why does Lady Ventriloquist need Harley's gymnastic skills? Something I've had to come to terms with because I go back and forth how agile I want my Bat characters to be. And I will say the Arkham games have helped with this because they've had to show how people can shimmy up the side of buildings so quick and jump from skyscraper to skyscraper with maybe something that could happen. But man, sometimes I'm like, why do they need her for this? This doesn't seem her cup of tea, but I guess she really is a trained gymnast, and that's a big part of her character that I always forget.
I don't think about Harley being a gymnast or an acrobat that much either, but it does fit with the Harlequin clown theme of Harley, and it makes sense. And it's okay. Lady Ventriloquist doesn't want to work with Catwoman because Catwoman's too dangerous and independent. At this point, Harley's still mostly thought of as a Joker's sidekick. Oh, it makes sense to just get the sidekick.
But yeah, Bob, but then how does Harley take out Lady Ventriloquist?
She takes out Scarface with a trash can lid, which is my favorite panel. And then in general, I like Harley hating Lady Ventriloquist. And my reading of it during the issue was it was because Lady Ventriloquist reminds Harley of herself with her toxic relationship with Scarface, mirroring Harley's relationship to Joker. But we find out in a flashback at the end, it's because the old ventriloquist was to Harley when she was an early inmate in the asylum.
Yeah, he put on some puppet shows for her. Real nice guy.
Yeah, it was
not trying to get in her pants.
He was not trying to get in her pants, unlike Scarface getting in all his dummies' pants.
Once again, we have a Harley at the end of this. She's in the passenger seat of the Batmobile, riding shotgun to Batman. She is, Bob, riding shotgun to Batman. How many characters can we get in this car before this runs up? And Bob, once again, Alfred makes an appearance in the story. So we're at Alfred count 3.
Did Alfred even appear in the 2-part fill-in Siege?
No, Bob, he did not.
Oh, wow.
That's why we're at Alfred count 3, Bob.
Issue number 832 is another fill-in, but we actually are going to cover this one. This one's by Royal McGraw and Andy Clark. We already talked about Clark. He was the artist on Siege. Royal McGraw is the guy who did the fill-in last time with Dr. Phosphorus. And I'm not sure if Matt agrees with me, but I do think that Royal McGraw was maybe doing these fill-ins specifically to fit the tone of the Paul Dini run. Whereas the fill-ins, the Scarecrow fill-in that we're going to skip later and the Die Hard fill-in we just skipped, I feel like those were just fill-ins. But with Royal McGraw, they're actually trying to use them to capture the tone and the style and themes of the Dini run. So, Matt, what goes down in this fill-in issue, 832 Triage?
So the Shark, in an attempt to reinvent himself after suffering a psychotic breakdown.
Wait, Matt, is that the Great White Shark?
No, Bob, this is the Shark, part of the trio, the terrible trio.
Thank you, Matt.
Well, he fakes his own death by replacing his teeth with shark teeth and attempts to murder his partners before Batman stops him.
Do you have any takes on the trio or the terrible trio? We got the Shark, we've got the Fox, and we got the Vulture. Any hot takes?
Bob, I did find out that the Fox was actually voiced by Bill Mumy in the animated series.
Oh. Listeners, you might know him as the kid actor on Lost in Space or as the assistant ambassador to Delenn in Babylon 5. Great science fiction actor.
That is correct. He played Lanier in that show.
That's his name. Thank you. Lanier, the original incel. I did want to ask one other thing, Matt. So, have you ever seen the Orson Welles movie, The Third Man?
I have not, no.
You should. It's a good movie. It wouldn't have to be, but I think they're trying to make a reference to that movie because that's the third man. But here we're talking about a fourth man that's manipulating the terrible trio, and a man off screen.
Who is this fourth man, Bob? I don't know. Who have they been trying to hype up the last couple of issues? Who could it be?
You thought it would be the Great White Shark, but it wasn't. I did want to ask, is it more disappointing to you that the terrible trio gets killed off? Because I don't have any great hot takes on the terrible trio either, but they're fun villains. I like having them around. I like a terrible trio issue once every 5 years. Is it more disappointing that they get killed off, or is it more disappointing that, okay, you do an issue where all three appear to get killed off and it's all fake outs, all three of them are fake outs? Which is more disappointing?
It's more disappointing that they have the fake out piece. Thought that they were all going to die. They are reoccurring characters. We've seen them before in other media. So their deaths, well, no one's going to blink twice about them getting killed off. I did think it would be more significant had they not just immediately been, you immediately find out it's a fake out.
Well, and to your point about them hyping up the Great White Shark, I thought they might actually kill the shark in order to make way for the new sharks.
No, Bob, Great White Shark, he's not a pawn. He's the king.
Exactly. That's why you got to kill the original shark. I do want to say that, speaking of what they do with the original shark, you already mentioned this in the summary, but he does get shark teeth surgically implanted in his jaw, and we get a nice reveal on page 29 of the shark's new 3 rows of bottom shark teeth, and that was really gross. I really like that page.
Pretty gross, Bob. Did you catch that towards the end of the issue that Great White Shark's inmate thing says W. White, which his name is Warren White. but
Yeah,
W. White, all I could think about was Walter White, having not read this in forever.
that's funny. I didn't remember his first name was Warren, but I did remember that his name was White because I remember Arkham Asylum Living Hell pretty well.
And we got an Alfred count 4, Bob. Alfred appeared in this issue.
Well, we're going to wrap up our coverage today, Matt, with a two-parter. It's called Trust, parts 1 and 2, although it's a little bit of a surprise two-parter. They set up the first one where you think it's just going to be another one-off, and then it's to be continued. It's a cliffhanger. And I did want to note, in issue 833, the first part of Trust, Denny's wife, the magician Misty Lee, gets a special thanks in the comics credits.
This is Zatanna-centered issue.
What goes down in the two-parter of Trust, Matt?
Well, Bob, Batman is caught in a death trap, and Zatanna is shot in the throat by the Joker, who had learned stage magic and taken on the guise of Ivar Loxius, the stage name of Art Wiener.
Yes, Matt. Yes, Matt. Your
Remember we-
favorite name. Your
Remember
favorite
we
name.
met Art Wiener a couple issues back, and I told you he was going to be important, Bob? Totally
do.
important.
I do just want to say, so his stage name is Ivar Loxius, but he also goes as Loxius the Obscure. That's a pretty cool stage name.
I had to go back and make sure, because I thought I'd made up the Art Wiener thing, or that
No,
I
no,
had
that's real.
confused it. I had to go back and find it to make sure. I had to cross-reference our last episode.
We're about to have a disagreement, I think, which is interesting because it's going to put me on the side of a prequel, which is a strange place for me to be. But Matt, were you excited that early in Trust Part 1, issue 833, that we see Giovanni Zatara and Zatanna interacting with child Bruce Wayne and child Hush?
Really, no, Bob. And this has some sort of name that I am struggling to define, but it's retroactive memories, where I'm supposed to believe a character we hadn't heard of for 60 years is now involved with everything that's ever happened to the main character, and I'm just supposed to go along with it. That's what Tommy Elliott has become around this time.
A retcon can be other stuff too, but do you sort of mean a retcon here?
I guess it's just a retcon in essence, but it seems it's something you really have to add a huge chunk of history to a character for it all to make sense.
I a little bit disagree. Now, I don't want to read a whole comic about Batman's childhood where he's interacting with Hush and Zatanna and Zatara, but as a flashback, it's fine. I say this even as somebody who hates Hush and Tommy Elliott and would prefer to never see him in a Batman comic. It's long been established that Zatanna have a connection to young Bruce Wayne. It's fine to make that Zatara and Tom Wayne collaborated on stuff, and Zatanna and Batman occasionally played as kids. And it's natural to put Tommy Elliott in there too.
You have to make the jump. It's natural to put Tommy Elliott there. No, it's not, because he wasn't there for 60 years of Batman's history.
Well, yeah, but I mean, to me, that's an argument about why you shouldn't create the character Tommy Elliott. I'd rather not see him, but once he's there, I don't care that he's there. Sure, stick him in. Why not?
No.
And I actually found the dynamics, again, it's a little cheesy and a little on the nose, but I found the dynamics between Child Zatanna and Child Batman to be pretty sweet.
But the whole thing, Bob, with them being children, it gave me Batman Begin vibes.
Definitely think Dini's trying to capture some of the feel of scenes from Batman Begins, which had, was a year and a half before this. Now, the thing that bothered me about this was less the retroactive quality of it or the prequel quality of it. It was, I'd forgotten that this two-parter was a follow-up to Identity Crisis, where Batman and Zatanna fall out because Zatanna wipes his memories. As a way to repair the relationship between Batman and Zatanna, I like these two issues. I like that it was basically undoing the bad work that Identity Crisis has done. But it was just really depressing to me to have to revisit the consequences of Identity Crisis in 2006, 2007. I'd forgotten this is connection to Identity Crisis, and so I was sad when that came up.
That drama was cringe.
The drama with Zatanna having wiped Batman's memories in Identity Crisis does manifest in Batman also just not liking magic, saying things like the less magic around me, the better, right? Batman's you, Matt. He doesn't care
For the magic. He wants to chop Clarion, the little magic boy's head off.
And then you mentioned this in the summary, Matt, but Loxius, who we find out is Joker, but Loxius shooting Zatanna's throat so she can't cast spells. That's a great image. It's the clear thing you have to do with Zatanna, but it's still a great image.
It's one of the better looking panels in the whole comic and in the whole run.
Do you like the trope of the Joker disguising himself? Obviously, it goes way back with his identity being uncertain, and even in Batman 1, where him being so chaotic and appearing in so many different ways, but we'll see it just a year or two later from this, we'll see Grant Morrison do a really good version of it, and pretty similar, frankly, where Joker disguises himself as Oberon Sexton in Batman and Robin. But I don't know. In general, do you like that trope of Joker disguising himself?
I am perfectly fine with it. Sometimes it's like with Batman. He's got a lot of time on his hands, apparently. When he's not learning how to train pigeons to do his dirty work, when he's not doing open heart surgery, when he's not learning how to do stage magic.
After the Chip Zdarsky run, we can just say probably Joker basically doesn't need to sleep. He went to that guy who trained Batman to have the Zur-En-Arrh personality, and so he doesn't have to sleep. His brain is operating on such a high psychotic level.
That sounds so stupid.
That part I actually don't hate. It's just everything else in that run.
Bob likes the partitions of the mind.
Like is a strong term. I would say don't hate it.
That's one of the harder parts for me to get around. It just seems so crazy. The Joker thing, man, have you been keeping up with that, Bob? You've been going through the Zdarsky run, right?
I mainlined the Zdarsky run about a month ago.
You're right, Bob. That is how he knows how to do all these things. Wow.
He's a higher being, dog. He's a
No.
higher being.
He's not some demon or something the other comics make him out to be.
I like that sometimes too, when you tease something demonic about the Joker. That can be fun too.
Which we definitely see, Bob, in issue 834, especially at the end of
Yeah.
the issue, with some fantastic artwork here.
A few things before the end of 834 that I really liked. We see Joker electrocute Batman in a chair, and I got to admit, it rather does look like a Mobius chair. It's coincidence. It does foreshadow, where did Batman learn that there were 3 Jokers, Matt?
That's right, he did. You had to learn
And
God, the more we talk about, the more I just want to tell you to shut up.
You're right. I should be told to shut up because the 3 Jokers thing is so dumb. But you should tell me to shut
I remember
up.
when he
You're-
pulled
you're-
his face.
I do remember the New 52 Tony Daniel Detective Comics run. That
Remember when he tried to make old Batman's family pull their face off?
I do remember that. That was Death of the Family. Excuse
Yeah.
me. I was about to say Death in the Family. No. Death of the Family.
And
Well,
when he fell down the Batcave?
I think that was also Death of the Family.
Yeah.
Well, Matt, one other thing I wanted to make you admit was cool. Even though you hate magic, you do have to admit that Zatanna using the blood from her throat to write a spell on the top of the water tank, that's pretty cool, right?
That's brilliant, but that's taught in magic school.
Anytime you're using blood in magic, you're cooking with gas. Then, ladies and gentlemen, you're cooking with gas. Now, I don't know. You seem to like the end of this, Matt, but the end, I don't know. I thought was maybe a little overwrought of Zatanna turning the audience into bats to bite the Joker. The audience bats are going ham on Joker. That's a cool enough idea. Maybe a little too extreme, but a cool enough idea. But the effect of the shot is rather ruined because this is on page 226 in the omnibus we're working out of. You just, as the bats are going ham on Joker, you have a nice gratuitous Zatanna butt shot. It's just really? A, couldn't you just not have done that? Or B, couldn't you have saved it to some other part of the comic?
Apparently missed the butt shot here. Oh yeah, there it is. That was actually the page I liked too. I didn't even realize the butt shot was there. Bob just went straight for the butt.
Well, this is me paying you back for I didn't notice how creepy Poison Ivy's expressions were in that one shot we talked about last week. So
Yeah.
I didn't notice that, and you called my attention to that.
Yeah.
So this is my payback.
This is cheeky. Ha 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 ha. Image I like the most though is Joker with all the bats around him. He just has this evil look, like we were just talking about, like speaking of when he looks demonic. I really like that look he has there with the robe and the bats pulling at the robe.
It's not quite, the Joker doesn't look as demonic, but you do have a nice splash page on the next page, 227, where the Batman's punching him out and the bats are still going
They hit him
wild.
in the face.
Well, Matt, I did want to ask, in summary, what would you say is your favorite issue of this set of issues? I'm really torn. There's things I like about all of them, so it's hard to pick a favorite, but what would you pick?
If I had to pick, I would probably go with the final two that we did, 833 and 834.
Even with the flashbacks.
Even with the flashbacks. I liked Zatanna being involved with it in the creative way they get her out of the trap. That really made it awesome. And then the reveal of the Joker being in disguise. It's just so kooky and crazy. And I like the two-parter piece because it reminds me of the old school Batman 66 where there's the cliffhanger death trap every episode. And anytime they recreate that in Batman comics, I appreciate it.
I really want to compliment how Dini and Kramer have done the Joker across these issues. Between this two-parter and then that one shot that we both really liked with Tim Drake and the Joker last week, They really do a good job of doing really good, unsettling Joker stories, but at the same time, they're not too insane. It doesn't have to always be Joker's about to kill Damian Wayne or Jason Todd or the Joker murders 3 dozen people. So it's a really creepy Joker, but it's also, I don't know, it doesn't go too insane, which sometimes you get the feeling in maybe post Dark Knight Returns Batman stories that people were just trying a little too hard to make the Joker evil.
Where the Joker turns everybody into a clown in the whole city.
Yeah, or just Joker casually murdering hundreds of people. And
Like genocide, and they still don't kill him.
nobody kills him. Nobody ever takes revenge.
Only Batman gets all those chances, and every time he just says, "No, I'm not doing it."
My second question for you, Matt, do you prefer Death in the City as a collection, or do you prefer the detective collection we talked about last time?
I'm really leaning toward Death in the City being the one that I feel is just stronger as far as the two that we've read. It's just because of the introduction of the new ventriloquist, which is a fun character, and then the whole Joker two-parter was awesome.
I honestly think the mysteries in this volume work a little better than the mysteries in the first volume. Not that the first volume is bad. I like the first volume, especially that Joker story, but I do think the mysteries work a little better. And the combination of you got Riddler working well, you got this good magic two-parter, you've got the lady ventriloquist. It all goes well.
In the first trade that we read, the cheesecake story with Poison Ivy, that kind of ruined some of it.
You do got to give Don Kramer credit. He does cheesecake, but it's nowhere near as creepy as I think that was Joe Bennett. Apologies if it wasn't, but I think it was Joe Bennett doing cheesecake in the Poison Ivy issue last time. Next time, we're going to do a collection that's called the Private Casebook of Batman. And that's basically Detective Comics issues 840 to 845. So we're going to skip issues 835 and 836. They're a 2-part Scarecrow fill-in. They're not bad, but there's just not that much to say. They're not bad. And then we're going to skip 837, which actually is a pretty good Dini issue, but it's a Countdown tie-in, and it's really confusing, and I don't want to try to explain Countdown to people. I don't understand Countdown myself, and it wasn't included in the collection, so I think we can just leave it off. And then we can definitely leave off issues 838 and 839, which are Resurrection of Ra's al Ghul tie-ins.
So, Bob, I think what we should do is have an episode where we just go through each DC crisis and try to explain it. So we try to explain it to each other, and then we get AI or something to explain it to us, or get a wiki or something, or just Google the actual what it is.
Matt, this idea for a podcast might end our friendship. Listen,
I would like for you to try to explain Crisis on Infinite Earths to me, because I still have no clue.
This is the take that bonds me and Matt, is that you got the collection of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Probably 11 or 12.
And you and I just, neither of us understand. We read it. We're like, what? This is the comic that people think it ends like 5 times.
Yeah.
It's such a bad comic.
And then we'll go through all the other crises that I kind of understood 0 Hour, even though as a kid I understand it. When I was an adult, I got a little bit better idea.
Famously, what our problem with 0 Hour was, right, Matt?
What was it, Bob?
You know how the gimmick of the issues was it was counting down to 0? It was 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Yes.
You and I, or at least definitely I, and I think you too, didn't understand that gimmick. And so I was reading the issues 0, 1.
I did that too. Well, if you're selling these to kids, come on now. I mean, come on. You should require instructions to read the comic.
I was just buying those at Kroger back in the day, and so
I do remember that.
Oh man, that's funny. That's funny. Sorry, listeners, we're not going to do that, but it would be funny up until the point where we just stopped doing the podcast. All right. Well, listeners, join us in 1 week for our coverage of the Private Casebook of Batman. Join us in 2 weeks for our coverage of the first volumes of Absolute Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, all in one episode. The first 6 or 7 issues of each of those books. And then we'll be back with Heart of Hush.
Oh, boy.
All right. Thanks for listening to Uncanny Treks. I'm Bob in Cascadia. That's Matt in the Southland.
Thanks for listening.